Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Way We See It. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of chatting to the gorgeous Katie, who is all the way across the pond. So she's not here in the UK, all about kind of her business, what she's about. And today we're kind of going to jump into some topics that are, probably talked about a lot, but equally maybe never really get the root cause and the bottom of it all, which is limiting beliefs and kind of talking about opening up to spirituality. So these are two things that I've massively been on a journey with, and I'm excited to hear Katie's story and I guess also some of her insights. So Katie, I would love for you to kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and particularly how you ended up doing what you're doing now, because let's face it, in school, they don't say, hey, do you want to be a self-love coach? So I'd love to know how you got to where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me and thank you for the space. So it's kind of a long story. I'll try to make it kind of quick. So I went to school for kinesiology. So exercise science is another word. And I ended up becoming a personal trainer, a professional competitor. And, I was a coach, a fitness coach for many, many years. And until I got my pro card, something happened where I really, really needed to take a look at my life and just kind of see like what was going on inside. I was having panic attacks nonstop, anxiety all the time. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to walk away. And so it forced me to go inwards. And so I went on this long journey inwards of figuring out who I was, asking bigger questions like, why am I here? What else is out there? And I just felt like I was made for more and I just didn't know what quite yet. So I read hundreds of books, listened to all the podcasts, hired so many mentors, and then it kind of led me to forming my own like formula for inner peace. And all of a sudden people started reaching out and they're like, I want mindset coaching from you, but I don't want to do fitness coaching. And it was nonstop. And I was like, you know what, I got to listen to this call from, the people and also that's on my heart. And I'm just going to make the pivot and teach people how I was able to find inner peace, walk away from panic attacks, anxiety, and just form a different life and realize that I wasn't stuck in fitness coaching. For many years, I felt like that was one of my limiting beliefs, that I could only, and I put air quotes, I felt like I could only be successful if I stayed in fitness coaching, because that's what I knew, that's what I was really good at. And once I let go of that belief on a subconscious level, I was really able to step into this pivot and things just kind of took off pretty fast. It was cool.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And it's so funny because obviously, although we've chatted briefly on Instagram, we haven't had like an in-depth conversation about our background, and mine is exceptionally similar. So, competing, that was kind of around my first step in the fitness industry, became a personal trainer, an online fitness coach that wrapped in mindset, and then made that transition actually in 2020 to leave the fitness coaching behind completely and just focus on the mindset and my other business. And so I just think it's amazing how many people can be so different from such different backgrounds, but go on really similar journeys. And I love what you said about going inwards. I think that's a great way to describe that transformation that can happen through personal development. So first of all, how did you get into, like you say, you kind of, the situation that led you to it, but what was kind of your first few steps in that personal development space? Like what book did you pick up or did you take a course? Like what was your first transition?
Yeah, so I liked sharing the breaking moment because I feel like somebody might out there might like have the same moment. And I knew I wanted to stop competing, and I thought like, I mean, that's how I brought in a lot of business for many years. And so it was just this like constant tear, like I want to walk away from it. It's not healthy for me anymore. But I was terrified. Like, how am I going to have, like that 6-figure business if I'm not competing and doing that, anymore? And so I remember I went to the gym one day and I was like, I felt so low and I was so just desperate. And I remember I can like visualize the whole scene. I was doing hip thrusts and I was like, I'm like listening to a podcast. I'm going to find a podcast. And the only podcast I knew of was Amanda Bucci. I literally was so wrapped up in the fitness world that I thought I didn't even know about any like entrepreneurs or any other podcast. I just knew of podcasts because Amanda Bucci was in fitness and she had a podcast. So I listened to her, and then she had a guest, Lori Harder. And she's been my mentor. I've hired her, but she was my mentor from afar for many years before I hired her. And she changed everything for me. I listened to her podcast, and so I would say podcasts and outdoor walks are like the very first thing that I really engulfed myself in. It opened up this whole new world for me.
Yeah, and that's crazy. And I love that it was just, almost that simple as there was just someone you followed on Instagram that you turned to in that time. And I think that's the new world that we live in, right? It's the new age of there's someone that we follow that's inspiring. And I know it was, for me, it wasn't kind of social media. As cliche as it sounds, I picked up The Secret. I always say that fell into my hands. I didn't pick it up. I was staying with my auntie in between houses, kind of moving out of one into another, and she had a bookshelf and it was there, and I just happened to choose it. And again, I believe that everything happens at the exact right time. So I guess what made you, obviously transitioning into fitness coaching makes logical sense from everything that you've said. So how did the mindset coaching come into your business, and how did you find that your fitness clients, did anything change in their results when that piece was added in?
Yeah. So, first of all, The Secret is like another like transformation story for me too. So that was like a game changer for me as well. So I love that you said that, because I'm always like preaching that, and every client I'm like, you got to read it. So, yeah, when I started, it wasn't like a harsh pivot. Like I was doing like bodybuilding coaching, and I was like one of the top, like all my girls were like, like top like placements at all their shows, and I was good at it. I just have an eye for it because I coached myself for many years to my pro card. Well, I got a coach like to get my like the last few months, but anyway, it wasn't a hard pivot. First, it was blending mindset into like fitness as a lifestyle, and that was called the Fit and Free Lifestyle Method, and that was a very successful program. That was like all of my income for over 2 years, and over like hundreds of women have been in it. It's just been it's a phenomenal program, but I just recently cut it because it's not aligned. But blended that, and when I started blending the mindset into it, I started noticing like these women were having like these deeper transformations. I was opening their eyes to like just so much more, like kind of like my eyes were open to so much more, and I was like, there's something here. And so it was kind of like a transition, blending fitness with mindset, and then a transition like, hey, more and more people want just mindset, so I'm just going to pivot even though it's kind of scary.
And it's just so interesting how similar our stories are. Like the reason I got into fitness coaching in the first place was a total accident. I was the only girl
Yeah.
competing at the time in the UK. Bikini came over like
Same.
10 years ago. And I was the only one. Yeah. Like, so I was it was a new thing. The only coaches were bodybuilders or me. So I was like, okay, cool. So I started helping friends. It wasn't because I genuinely knew I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. That's the truth of it. But I started to build a bit of an eye for it. And I actually remember one time a friend of mine, and she just wasn't losing any weight. And I just said, you need to refeed and take the weekend off. And then she lost 3 pounds on the Monday. And I was like, I'm good at this. And it kind of became a business by accident. And you know what, one thing that you brought out, which I thought was really interesting. And again, for anyone watching, I'm so sorry if my Wi-Fi is a bit dodged. We're trying to make the best of it today. But one of the things you said was that even though your business was thriving, you still chose to park that part of it. And I know this myself, because it's hard to explain to people why you would ever leave a thriving business. But I know that for me, it didn't feel like it fit with who I had become. And there were things about what I was teaching within that competitive space that, as much as I loved it, and my girls were what I'd call very well-rounded humans, thanks to all the mindset work, there's just still something about that industry that for me is only temporary. It's not a permanent journey in that industry. And I think what I now am passionate about is teaching people not the route to a permanent place, but helping them find themselves and what they want to do and who they want to be in the real world, not in just one particular bubble. So how did you find, I guess, that parking of that part of your business? Like, what were some of the things that you had to work through, or some of the stories that maybe you were telling yourself?
Yeah. So I had been doing so much like work on myself, personal development. And then I ended up getting in this certification program, and it offered coaching like on the side. And so it's like, NLP, hypnosis, EFT, time techniques, all of these certifications. And the coaching on the side, they took me through these techniques that I was getting certified in. And that was a huge game changer for me, because I was able to work through my limiting beliefs that I had on a subconscious level. So I learned a lot of things like, um, and like time techniques blended with hypnosis, blended with having a community, was just so huge for me. Like I learned that I actually had a fear of success. Like, and I will say, like, a lot of people think they have a fear of failure, but it's actually a fear of success. And if you have a fear of success, you will subconsciously sabotage yourself over and over without even being aware of it. And so if you don't know where that's coming from an earlier part of your life, you're going to have no clue like where it's rooted from. And not just having the awareness. Once you shine awareness over your limiting beliefs, you take away all the power, because now you're aware. And so you can continue to work through it. And I always say, just bringing awareness to limiting beliefs is probably like 70% of the game. Yes, you need to do work to continue to remove them and embody that new belief, but just shining a flashlight over this thing that's kind of subconsciously happening as a pattern over and over. And so I learned, and I like telling this because I feel like some people, things like this could have happened to them as well. And mine came from, and I didn't even know, in time techniques, you're closing your eyes and she's like, or whoever's taking you through it, it's like, at what age did you first start believing this? I mean, that's just part of the process. And like, it's just your gut response. And I said 8 years old. And I was like, what? Like, where did that come from? And then she was like, just fly over the event. And what I saw was like, when my dad started being really successful when I was 8 years old, I saw less of him. So I attached success with seeing less of family. And so anytime I would be super close to this income goal, like, and I'm talking like $50 or like $100, I just couldn't get over that thing I set out for myself for many, many years. I would sabotage myself. I would pull back because I thought it meant I would have less time with my husband subconsciously. And so unraveling all of this really allowed me to step into a lot of different, like, just claiming power. I like, within a month, I launched a program that I had been thinking about for over a year, of doing this work, because I just had, like, I felt fearless. I released all this stuff that wasn't needed anymore.
So interesting. And I always say awareness is the first step, and like you say, it's 70% of it. And I think the biggest thing is always bringing awareness to it. I think the challenge is then moving forward with that. And it's so interesting you said about, that gut feeling of 8 years old. I've been in therapy for, well, what feels like forever in the best way. But, I think even a therapist needs a therapist, right? So I'm not a clinical therapist, but being a coach, you sometimes feel like it. And my therapist has been an absolute godsend for me. And what she would always keep asking me, she'd be like, right, let's talk about childhood. I'm like, my childhood was perfect. We don't need to go there. It was fine. I remember nothing. And that would be my automatic response. And then over time, we would talk about things and she'd say, where did that come from? And I'd say, oh, well, it's because this happened. Da, 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 da. She's like, I thought you didn't remember. And it's because I've chosen to block out whole sections of my life because either they were too painful for me to associate with, and at the time, they're not painful now, they're childhood memories, but they were painful for me at the time that I didn't understand them. Or on the flip side of that I just didn't believe they were relevant. And I have learned more and more in my personal development journey, in my therapy, that everything stems from those formative years in childhood. And I think the challenge is that so many people just don't want to go back. They want to try and move forward without looking backwards. And like you say, until you shine a light on where something came from and you can rationalize it and, you know, let it go, it's impossible to move forward. So you mentioned you mentioned obviously the fear of success being a big one. And I definitely understand your rationale around your dad for sure. Were there any other limiting beliefs that have been, I guess, big barriers or things that you've had to overcome, or, you know, things that particularly you see a lot with your clients?
Yeah. So it's so funny that like you just said that, because I'm working with a client and we're like about 3 months in, and it's like your soul knows when you're ready to up level, but your brain may take a little bit time to like catch up. And so she invested in my program, Self Love to Side Hustle, 3 months ago. And she came and she was like so ready. I could tell she was so ready. And then we get to talking about limiting beliefs. She's like, I had a perfect childhood. There's nothing wrong with, like, I feel so good. And she's like, I don't remember much. And like, it was great. I have good parents. Yes, you can have good parents, but you can still have things that you like, limiting beliefs around little things that didn't feel good for you, even if your parents had the purest intentions. And so we're starting to crack her open, and she's like, okay, now I see where this abandonment like thought comes from, and random things like that. So everyone's a little bit different. I will say like the top limiting beliefs are not feeling good enough at something, whether that's smart enough, worthy enough, or whatever, not feeling enough. That's like definitely the top one. In a different, they can all go different directions. And like fear of success and fear of failure, I know that's a little bit of a limiting belief, but not as much as like, you know, not feeling enough. Those are like probably the top three and they can all go in their separate directions to be a little bit different. um, One for me was not feeling smart enough to do anything other than fitness. And that was just an extension, not feeling smart enough. And then, you know, a different faucet of to do anything other than athletics. And so I started exploring more and more where that came from.
Yeah, it's so true. And I've been through stages in my business where I felt that I don't look good enough, you know, like if I'm not in my peak shape or photo shoot condition, that I'm
Yeah.
not worthy to coach, or I'm not. And that was even in my fitness business, right? And that took a lot for me to overcome, because I think so many women, you know, we attach so much of our self-worth to the way that we look and the food that we eat and the habits that we have around food. Particularly, you know, there's a sense of virtue if we're dieting, which, you know, we all still have it whether we like it or not. There's still this sense of I'm being good, I'm being better. And you know what, I don't actually come from a family where my mum ever dieted. It's not something I was brought up with at all. My mum has never been on a diet in her entire life, which is great. So I always wondered where it came from. And actually, it turns out it came from other people at school who were on a diet because their mum was on a diet. And I think it shows
Yeah.
that you model so many people you don't even know. Like, I look around and I hear myself say things. I'm like, where have you got that from? Like, you've modeled that. You know how like you always say the word, my partner's from a different place in the UK and I take the piss out of him all the time for saying words a certain way, but I've started doing it. There's certain things that I say, and that's modeling
Yeah.
at its finest. And so I think one of the things that I've had to learn is that the people that I surround myself with isn't just a Jim Rohn quote, right? It's not just the 5 people you spend the most time with, you'll be the 6th, right? It's not a superficial statement. You model your environment. And even if it's a virtual environment, the people you're consuming. And that for me has been one of the biggest things I've changed, is who I spend my time with and where I spend my energy. And that has completely leveled up my income, my lifestyle, my mindset. So my question to you is, I mean, other than, like you say, you touched on Laurie, and I follow Laurie mainly because of the network marketing industry. Obviously, she built an incredible network marketing business alongside everything else that she's done. So outside of Laurie, are there any particular, you know, role models, or there are people in your environment that you intentionally spend time with because they do good things for your energy?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I moved to Colorado, last March, so almost a year ago. I was living, and this is my dream state for sure. I mean, the mountains are an hour away. We go snowboarding every single weekend. We go hiking in the summer, and it's just amazing. And when I moved here with intention to make more friends, like have a group of girlfriends. And I will say that's been probably like the most transformative thing for me is having a group of girlfriends in person, because we all have friends online, yeah, and it's like amazing too to have entrepreneur friends, but it changes everything when you have those girlfriends in person. um and it's not always talking about business, just to like kind of let loose sometimes, but then also like chatting business and random like tips here and there. Oh, I could help you with that. And I hired an assistant, and I was so scared to do that for so many years. I don't know what the heck I was doing, but that's been a game changer for me as well.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? I don't have an assistant because I am like Mrs. Anal over my time in terms of that side of things, but I source out and delegate a lot of like my material work, like stuff that needs to be produced or content and things like that, and video editing, stuff that I'm not good at, because like, and something as simple as I have a cleaner, that completely changed
Yeah.
not just my time but also my money mindset. I think when you can pay somebody to be better at the things that you're not good at, actually, I think it's good for that sense of self-worth in, spending money. So yeah, the people that you surround yourself with, as Tony Robbins would call them, your team, right? My team includes like my cleaner and the person who takes care of my dog
Yeah.
and those kind of things. So, I mean, obviously, like you mentioned your husband, and obviously I presume he's mega supportive of everything that you're doing. So what does he do, and how does kind of your business kind of work into your relationship? Because obviously, as much as we want to separate work and personal, boundaries is interesting when you run a lifestyle business. So I guess I'm keen
Yeah.
to know kind of how you guys make that relationship kind of dynamic work, and if the stuff that you do particularly as a couple that has allowed you to thrive.
Yeah, so it's a lot different since COVID hit because he's working from home. So he sees that. I mean, I don't work 8 hours a day ever. Like, there's some days I work 2 hours a day, and my main job on those days is to align my energy. I mean, I'm a projector on the human design, and like I attract business by making sure I'm like magnetic. And so that requires a lot of work. And that's worked for me. I've built, multiple six-figure businesses and off of aligning my energy. And I know it sounds like crazy to people, and they're like, yeah, right. But it works for me. And so when he first started working from home, he was like, like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? But yeah, we're completely separate. He's not very spiritual. He can get into it sometimes. I'm very spiritual, and I like it that way. When I was super into fitness, like, I mean, he wasn't even lifting. And I like having someone to kind of ground me and just pull me back to reality. Instead, I could get so deep into like the woo-woo stuff, or I need someone to be like, Katie, you can't walk around like saying this, like talking about crystals and like talking about spirits. Like, people are gonna think you're crazy. So it's a good balance.
Yeah, I love that. And it's not, but it's also equally so refreshing that he's supportive of everything you want to do. He doesn't have to be into everything you want to do. He just has to support what you want to do, and that makes it healthy. So I'm jumping around a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'm conscious of time and kind of, I mean, obviously I know we can chat again, but it's just so nice to kind of get a kind of really fresh perspective on things. So books. So obviously we've mentioned The Secret, but I would love to know your top 3 personal development or spirituality books that have made the biggest impact or difference on your life and business.
Yeah. So that's another thing I did in the beginning of my like not personal development, but the beginning of my spiritual journey. The book that started it all for me was obviously Gabby Bernstein. I feel like everyone talks about her. She really normalizes spirituality. So The Universe Has Your Back. I think I know it's a foundational book for every single one of my clients, and it's just such a good read, connecting to yourself. And The Secret, obviously, but I'll say two others because we already mentioned The Secret. Lately, I'm really into like past lives. I know that sounds crazy, but the book Many Lives, Many Masters. I think his name is like Brian L. Weiss. It's, if you get it on Audible, because the way he reads it to you is just, he's a beautiful storyteller. It's great to read from him, and that helps me understand just more of the spiritual world and more of like a connection to different energies and different sources and all of that. So it might be a little out there for some people, but I thought it was super cool. I'm just looking behind me. The Alchemist and The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra,
Yeah.
however you say his last name.
I think we say it differently depending on our accent, but Deepak, we all know our mate Deepak. Everyone's my mate, that's what I call them. My mate Gabby Bernstein, it's Gabs, isn't it? And I loved Super Attractor, actually. When I was going through a big business goal last year, I went through a big push, and I listened to Super Attractor literally on repeat. I was like asking for signs every 3 seconds,
Yeah.
I was there. And yeah, she's really brought spirituality to the mainstream. And I think, because I've seen her speak in person, she did a thing in the UK, and it is interesting how different she is in person versus how different she is on materials and books and audios. And actually that's quite refreshing to see that as much as she's brought it to the mainstream, when you meet her in person, she takes it really deep, and she tells it really how it is. And I agree with you, she's made it accessible for people, so it's an amazing book. So one of the questions that I love to ask people is their favorite quote or mantras that they catch themselves saying, or people know them for, or that they just absolutely love. Like, people always know me for saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So something like that.
Yeah. So actually, it just slipped in my mind. My favorite book, besides The Secret and Universe Has Your Back, is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And do you love it too? So, that's what my favorite affirmation is from The Big Leap. And I expand in abundant success and love as I inspire those around me to do the same. And another one is, it gets to be easy. So anything you feel doubtful around, like maybe it's making money, maybe it's getting through your workout, maybe it's building a landing page that you haven't outsourced, and just reminding yourself it gets to be easy. You get to choose like how it feels, and if you choose that this is hard, it's going to be hard. So it gets to be easy is one of my favorites.
Oh my God, that is crazy about The Big Leap. Like, in my journal every morning, I write that exact affirmation. I was like, she's not going to say it. I was like, she is. I'm like, that's crazy. But you're so right about the easy thing. I think that there's so many, quotes, stories about, the struggle is worth it. There's no progress without pain. And I totally agree that sometimes you have to go through the hard shit to be able to have the clarity to have the amazing life and appreciate everything. And sometimes the struggle is uphill, but equally there have been 2 points in my business that were very similar in terms of what I was going for, which is just a goal, right? And one felt like the easiest thing I've ever done, and one felt like the hardest thing I've ever done. I thought I was going to die. Like, I actually thought I was going to die from a heart attack at 32. So, and that was just the choice. I decided how I was going to feel. And I think we forget that sometimes. I think we, especially right now, the last 12 months, right, we have allowed that choice over how we feel to be dictated and impacted by outside sources. And I think one of the things that I am really working on right now is, consciously working into that subconscious, is around the fact that everything I do is a choice. Whether it feels like it or not, everything I do is a choice. And I think when we can help our clients see that, I really think that is the key to people creating happiness, success, love, abundance, whatever it might be, because they realize they truly are in control and responsible and have the power over their own lives. And I think, God, as a coach, that is the most rewarding feeling when somebody goes, oh my God, I get it. I'm in charge. I'm like, yay!
Yeah. And it's like, so it's hard to explain because it's not like, oh, I lost like 10 pounds, like on the scale. Like, it's like not quite tangible until it is, until it's like, oh my God, like you're not just reading these inspiring quotes, you're like fully embodying them and you understand them at a whole new level kind of thing.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Well, look, Katie, I know we could chat forever, but I'm conscious of time, of keeping you, and also making sure that our listeners want to come back and hear you again. So before we jump off, where can people find you? What are your social media pages, handles, so that people can jump on and give you a follow?
Yeah, so I laugh because every time I say my last name, people think I'm saying Turner. It's actually with a K, Kerner. But my handle is KT, so the letter K, the letter T, Miller Kerner. So Kerner. And I'm the most active on Instagram, so just find me over there.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've no doubt we'll speak again and off air because clearly we have a lot to talk about. But thank you so much for joining us today. And that was the